These days, when people think of Japan, they usually think of a group of islands close to Korea and just south of Russia. They know it has a distinctive language and culture, and generally think of it as one homogeneous country. It is true that now the most common Japanese dialect is what is referred to as NHK Japanese, which reflects the Tokyo dialect and is what is usually broadcast on the national news programs. However, there are still many regional dialects that can be so different from standard Japanese that it is difficult for anyone outside of the region to understand it. Historically, Japan consists of not only distinct dialects, but also different cultural groups that had their own language and culture. You may have met a person with an Ainu heritage, but chances are you haven't met an Ainu speaker in Japan. After all, the number of native speakers is fewer than 5, but the Ainu people once populated a wide area of northern Japan, stretching from Tohoku to Hokkaido, the Chiishima Islands, and the southern part of Sakhalin Island. Ainu is categorized as a separate language, meaning it doesn't come from any language family. It is distinct from Japanese and is traditionally an oral language without an original writing system. Many things have happened to push the Ainu language to the brink of extinction. Currently, government, community groups, and citizens are trying hard to preserve the language in a race against time. Today, these include a cultural center at Upopoi that opened in Shiraoi, Hokkaido in 2020, as well as projects designed to include the language in daily life. For example, people can now hear announcements in Ainu on some bus routes in Hokkaido, and anyone with an internet connection can access a popular conversational Ainu channel on YouTube. The Ainu language is the only language identified by UNESCO as being critically endangered. This means where the youngest speakers are grandparents and older, and they speak the language partially and infrequently. On a 5-level scale, with 5 meaning extinct, this represents level 4. Formerly, there were 3 distinct dialects of Ainu, but today UNESCO categorizes the Hokkaido dialect as the sole remaining dialect in existence. It is difficult to pinpoint how many people can speak Ainu, or even how many Ainu people there are. According to a 2017 survey by the Hokkaido government, just over 13,000 people in Hokkaido identify as Ainu, although the actual number may never be known, because past discrimination forced many to hide their Ainu heritage, even from their own children. The Ainu language has become endangered today due to various forces that have been in play for hundreds of years. In 1869, the Meiji government officially declared Hokkaido part of Japan, after which many ethnic Japanese began moving into Hokkaido in far greater numbers. Shortly after, Ainu culture suffered another blow when many Ainu on Sakhalin and Chiishima Islands were displaced to Hokkaido with the signing of a treaty between Japan and Russia in 1875. The Meiji government also encouraged a view throughout Japan in which Ainu customs were regarded as uncultivated, and many were restricted or prohibited. Schools for Ainu children were established to increase their attendance, but the Japanese language was given priority. While speaking Ainu was not banned, using Japanese was expected at schools and government-run facilities. These policies were intended to civilize the Ainu people, but they caused the Ainu language to be spoken less, even within their families, leading to a drop in the number of Ainu speakers, to the point where the language is now endangered. The situation started to change in the 1970s when the Hokkaido government began taking steps to improve the living standards of Ainu people with support from the national government. These efforts have helped shrink the educational and economic differences between Ainu residents and the wider communities in which they live. For example, in 1979, not many Ainu youth continued on to high school, and enrollment at university was also low. But by 2017, most Ainu youth finished high school and went on to university, according to a survey by the Hokkaido government. In 1997, the Japanese government provided support for teaching, promoting, and researching Ainu culture, and in 2008, the government officially recognized the Ainu people as an indigenous group with a unique language as well as a religious and cultural distinctiveness. Where the government had previously promoted the Japanese language over Ainu, it is now supporting efforts to preserve and promote the speaking of Ainu. One such effort involves recording the Ainu language. Since 2015, the Cultural Affairs Agency has been working on a project to archive Ainu speech recordings. The project aims to create a library of materials not only for academic research purposes, but also to build a resource for people to learn Ainu and pass it down to future generations. As part of this project, the Cultural Affairs Agency is digitizing voice recordings and providing financial and technical assistance to Ainu communities and other groups that have materials in the language so they can create library collections as well. By March this year, the project expects to have a total of 4,500 hours of recordings. The majority contain oral narratives and folklore. The process is scheduled to continue through 2026, with an eye to transcribing and translating the materials and releasing them as an archive. In addition to collecting materials, the project is creating a searchable resource to make it easier for people to look up words and sample sentences in Ainu. The resource can be used by Ainu speakers to build conversational skills as well as create new words in the language. It is in fact already being used this way. Announcements at Upopoi, the new Ainu cultural facility, incorporate newly created Ainu words. Upopoi is a national center for learning about and promoting Ainu history and culture. It opened in Shiraoi in July 2020 on the shore of Lake Poroto, which is about an hour from Sapporo and 40 minutes from the new Chitose Airport. It consists of the National Ainu Museum, the National Ainu Park, and a memorial site for services. Upopoi means singing in a large group in the Ainu language. The outdoor park features a recreation of a kotan, a traditional village, as well as a stage for traditional dance performances and areas for hands-on crafts, cooking, and other activities. Since 1997, the Foundation for Ainu Culture has been offering Ainu classes, including advanced classes, classes for parents and children, and classes for training teachers. It has also been working to create Ainu language teaching materials. On the radio, conversation lessons have been available since 1987. Accompanying textbooks are available for beginner courses, and podcasts of the broadcast can be downloaded from the internet. A modern-day feature to the traditional classes on radio is the YouTube video lessons. The Sito channel offers dozens of lessons on conversational Ainu using topics of interest to young people. Starting with self-introductions, the lessons move on to talking about love interests, food from traditional deer stew to shaved ice, songs, animals, and everyday experiences like birthdays, hay fever, and studying for tests. Comments on the YouTube channel include thanks from people studying Ainu in Japan and around the world. The Sito channel is run by Maya Sekine, a student at Keio University. Sekine grew up in a close-knit Ainu community of Nibutani. Her maternal grandparents and mother are Ainu artisans with Ainu heritage, and her father, while not of Ainu descent, is an Ainu language instructor. Sekine says she was blessed for being able to grow up around Ainu foods and crafts, and to use Ainu words in daily conversation. She did not realize at the time how much the culture was a part of her childhood until she left Nibutani to attend junior high school elsewhere. In an interview, she shared that she went through something of an identity crisis in her early teens, even hiding her ethnicity at one point. But leaving her hometown ultimately gave her a new perspective on her culture and identity, which blossomed into pride in being Ainu by the time she entered high school in Sapporo. Sekine has become something of a language and culture ambassador for the community through her efforts to broaden awareness of the language. In addition to her YouTube channel, she recorded bus announcements in Ainu when she was 18 and hosted Ainu radio lessons with her father Kenji in 2018. The Ainu people faced decades of hardships during which their language and cultural heritage were decisively damaged. The language has reached the point of being critically endangered, with only a few fluent speakers left. There are now more opportunities than ever to see and hear the Ainu language in daily life, as well as a new generation of youth taking pride in their cultural heritage and interested in keeping their language alive. These efforts, coming from both the government and Ainu communities, offer the best hope yet for the survival of this critically endangered language.